Hi guys, Dr. DiNezza with Infinity Holistic Healthcare with the first of a new series that I'm going to do. This is a series about the truth about lab testing. And here's the thing, guys. Sometimes in functional medicine, the uniqueness of what we do is because we have access to different tests, or we have the ability or the knowledge or the open-mindedness to run special tests. So like the Cyrex food sensitivity test, for example, you can't just go to your normal doctor and get that. They probably won't know what it is. Or they won't have an account with the company or whatever. Sometimes though, it's a matter of just looking at normal rudimentary blood work that can get run anywhere, like LabCorp blood work, and looking at it through a different lens, or just knowing what you're looking at and being able to pick up on patterns. So I hope you like this series. I find myself talking about a lot of these every day in my office, so I figured it was high time I did some videos on it. The first one I want to address, because it is so common and so foundational to everything else, is anemia. So here, I guess here's the long and short of it. There's like a million types of anemia. You don't need to worry about all of them. Right now, I'm going to focus on the most common, which is iron deficiency anemia. Everybody who gets labeled with anemia thinks that they have iron deficiency, or so it seems. And I think that's partially to blame the doctors, not just the patients. So normally you would get something called the CBC, a complete blood count that looks at red blood cells, hematocrit, hemoglobin, and a whole bunch MCV, MCHC, etc. And you would look at that, and if your red blood cells are low, your hemoglobin is low, your hematocrit is low, then bada bing, you have anemia and you get labeled with it. And oftentimes they'll say, okay, cool, now take this iron. And that's not the best way to do it. There is another type of anemia that I'll mention later that very closely mimics anemia of iron deficiency, but it's not responsive to iron. And here's a pro tip that has not a lot to do with blood work, but if you are anemic and you've taken iron and the iron didn't make a really noticeable difference in like less than a week, it was not iron. I've had friends and roommates who were grossly iron deficient. They get on some iron and it's literally like a 3 day to a week turnaround of, my God, I have energy again. Now, if you're really deficient, it might take a while to build up, but you should notice some difference, I think, within a week or two. If it doesn't happen like that for you, if you take iron for a while and you don't feel some lights coming on and some difference, it might not be iron, and you should really listen to the rest of my video. Anyhow, back onto the labs. So red blood cells, hemoglobin, hematocrit low, you have anemia. Congratulations. Now it's a matter of figuring out what kind. Oftentimes, the next thing the doctors will look at is ferritin. Ferritin is your storage form of iron. It's the way that you save it for a rainy day. So if you take 10 years out of your life like I did and you're a vegetarian and you don't get a lot of iron, well, okay, maybe you have some in the savings account for later. Ferritin, the lab reference range for LabCorp goes down to like 15. For women of menstruating, childbearing age, I like to see that number about 50 or higher. And I actually know a local hematologist who would agree with me on that. 50 or higher in childbearing age, menstruating women is where you want to be. If you're below 50, you're already verging on some iron deficiency, whether or not it's manifesting in the CBC. So that's a number one. But number two is I've noticed almost no doctors run the most important part of this panel. So you've got your CBC, tells you you're anemic. You've got the ferritin, which is important, but there's a marker called TIBC, total iron binding capacity, and that will show up usually on an iron panel, but not always. You have serum iron, which is just the free floating stuff that you have in your bloodstream. And this TIBC thing, the best way to think about it and the way I explain it to patients is that's your body signaling how hungry it is for iron. So if you have a ton of iron, if your ferritin's kind of high and you're good to go and you don't need iron, this thing will be lower because your body is saying, no, I'm good. No, thank you. I'll pass on the iron for now. And you're not going to absorb as much of it. If you are really iron deficient, that thing is going to creep up higher and your body is going to say, man, give me all the iron you can. I want all of it. So that's actually your best window to figuring out are you really iron deficient? Is that TIBC number starting to creep up into the 400s or higher? Or is it just anemia of inflammation? Now, this is the other type of microcytic hypochromatic type of anemia where your red blood cells and everything is low. And it mimics iron deficiency, but if you don't run that TIBC number, you're not going to catch it. And it drives me bonkers because TIBC is dirt cheap. It's like $10 to run, and I don't know why more doctors don't run it. It's totally merited. If you haven't gotten this number, make sure you get it. But if TIBC is high, you are iron deficient, you need iron. If it's low or normal, the anemia isn't caused by iron deficiency. And giving you iron might actually make you worse, or it won't do anything at all. In either case, I guess that's the whole point of my video in a nutshell is if you have this other kind of anemia, this anemia of inflammation, I'll probably do a different video on that later. I've actually had that before, and luckily I caught it and I didn't take iron for it because I knew better, but make sure you share this with your anemic friends who maybe have taken iron and haven't felt any better from it, and maybe this will shed some light onto why that is. I hope this was beneficial, and I will see you in the next video because I'm going to make this into a series.